Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I have my December wrap up for you, so let's just get right into it. So this month for me has been super slumpy. I have had such a hard time picking up books lately, which is why I didn't have a mid-month wrap up this month. I am just gonna have this one. I read 14 books this month, which for some people is probably a ton, but for me is like practically nothing. And almost all of them were audiobooks I was listening to while I was working, so I was sort of just like passively listening to them. And I've just, like I said, I had a really hard time picking up books lately. I haven't picked up a book in days now, probably over a week I would say, since I read a book, like physically read a book. And I've just had a really hard time with that. I think I like burnt myself out because I was reading so many books to do all the videos that I wanted to do this year, and then I also last month read like 33 books. Almost all of them were audiobooks that I was listening to while I was working again, but I just didn't really love any of them really, and so I've just had like a ton of mediocre books and they haven't been making me want to pick up other books, so that's sort of been my main issue. So the first books I read this month were the Crave series books by Tracy Wolff. I read Crave, Crush, and Covet. These are the three that are out. There are two more coming out next year. I'm not sure if those are the last two or what's up with that. I gave Crave 4 stars, I gave Crush 4.5 stars, and Covet 4 stars. I think for this series I'm going to do a whole video on them once I read the other two books, so I'm not going to go crazy in depth on what they're about. These are like vampire romance type books, but I will say there's so much more to them than that. This series in particular I feel like gets a lot of flack for being like a Twilight knockoff almost, and it was nothing like that. Like the first book is kind of cheesy, I'll give it that. It's very typical like vampire, bad boy, and like new girl in town kind of thing. But the second book I feel like just really picked up and was a lot better. There is not really any like parallels to Twilight other than like girl falling in love with a vampire. That's literally the only one. And I just really liked this one. It was very easy to read. I listened to the audiobooks of these, so I got through them really quickly. If you know me, you know I hate reading long books. So these were really good. Some of the audiobooks for these books are like 22 hours long. So I was listening to them on 3 times the speed, and I was able to get through them much quicker, which was a lot better for me, and was definitely a way I would recommend reading them if you're sort of intimidated by the size, because they are worth reading, I think, personally. Next was Scrooged by Vi Keeland and Penelope Ward. This is obviously a Christmas book. This was a sort of short story collection. There was 3 different ones in this one. They're all about 30 pages long, so you can get through these super quick. I really liked the first 2. The third one I wasn't a huge fan of, but I did like the first 2 for what they were. I don't usually read short stories too often, so I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I did feel like they did a good job of sort of giving you enough that you were like, okay, yeah, I'm good with that couple getting together or whatever. But like I said, the third one wasn't my favorite, but I did like the first 2, and I liked that they were quick and easy to read because, like I said, I've been like super slumpy, so I haven't been feeling like reading an entire book. So these were really easy for me to get through, which I liked. I think I gave this 4 stars. I would probably give the third story a 3-star if I could like give it its own rating, but I obviously couldn't really do that, but I would if I could. Next was The Office Party by Whitney G. This was a novella, and this one followed a girl who worked for this company, and this guy that ran the company was insistent on them going away for Christmas every year. He considered it like their holiday bonus was they got to go on this trip, and everyone just kind of like, or I guess maybe not everyone, but this one girl just really hates him for it. She thinks it's stupid and she's trying to get out of this trip, and he literally follows her to like wherever she goes to get away from him. And I thought this one was cute. I've never really read a novella where I felt like it could have done better as a book, but I feel like this one would have. It definitely had a lot of potential like going forward, but I felt like it was just too short. The ending sort of seemed rushed because there was so much build up in the beginning to get to there. So I think it might have done better as an entire book for me. I gave this one 3 stars. Next, I'm probably going to butcher the name of this author, but I read Happy Endings by thein-kim, I think is how you say it. Maybe, I hope. This one I had high hopes for. I was planning on doing a video where I read the Washington Post top 10 romances of the year, and this was on that list. And this was actually the book that kind of made me decide against doing that video, because I read 3 of the books on this top 10 list and didn't really like any of them. And so I was kind of like, okay, like this isn't worth me filming because it's just going to be me trashing all these books that everybody loves. And I think this one had a lot of potential. It's definitely unique in that it follows a girl who is sort of, I don't want to say she's like in a pyramid scheme because she's not really, but she's like running her own business sort of along the lines of like Avon, I guess, where she's like a representative for a sex toy company, but she's not getting a lot of business and she wants to open her own storefront, and she ends up running into this guy that she went to college with, I think, and he is running a restaurant in this, or she didn't go to college with him. She met him in New Orleans. I don't know why she was there, but they were there together. And then they just like broke up over, like, he left a post-it note for her being like, yeah, we're done. And the thing that bothered me about this one was that she meets this guy again later. It's supposed to be like a second chance kind of thing. But she doesn't want to, like, acknowledge that he broke up with her via a post-it note all these years before. Like, every time he tries to bring it up to, like, explain, she's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. And I just felt like it was so, like, stupid in that sense, where I was like, why don't you just, like, get it out of the way and talk about it? And, like, he had his, like, reasons for why he did that, but, like, she just, like, wouldn't hear it. And I was like, you guys are supposed to be adults. Like, come on, just, like, talk about it, you know? Like, it's not that hard. And I don't know, that part didn't really vibe well for me, because I was like, okay, this is starting to sort of seem kind of unrealistic, that she's just like ignoring this entirely and pretending everything's fine. And like I said, it did have different aspects that I liked. I liked the sort of female sex positivity in this book, and also this one has a interracial couple, which I liked as well. I find you don't see that like often enough in romance books. It's all like dating within their race, which I kind of hate. And so I liked that, but just like the story itself, I was kind of like, like, why wouldn't she just talk to him about it? This seems really stupid. And so that kind of bothered me. I think I gave this one 3 stars. Next was The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Liese. I know I'm saying this last name wrong, and it's probably so easy to say, and I just don't know how to say it. But I read this one, I really liked it. I talked about this in my Christmas romance rec video, so I'm not going to go like too crazy in detail with this one. But this one is just a, obviously, Christmas romance following a girl who works in a bookstore and this guy that is sort of hired to co-manage with her. And she sort of sees him as a threat from the beginning because she is autistic, and she thinks that the owners hired him to co-manage because she couldn't do it on her own. Like, she thinks she's not capable, and that's why he was brought in. So she's kind of angry at him since he like shows up. And it sort of got like the Hating Game vibes. I didn't like this one as much as the Hating Game, but it was like a cute little Christmas book. Next was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I talked about this in my Goodreads Top 10 Romance of the Year video. Didn't love this one. This was another one with the second chance romance thing where I just wasn't really buying it. The couple in this book was together for 1 week in high school, where one of them was drunk and one of them was high the entire time. So I just kind of was like, okay, it's not really a second chance, and they kept acting like they like knew each other all these years ago and whatever. I was like, you literally hooked up for a week. Like, you weren't in like a serious relationship. And that was just bothering me. I don't know if these books were just bothering me more because I've been feeling so slumpy, or if it's these books being the way they are that's making me feel slumpy. Like, I had no idea what's going on with me in reading lately, but these books just weren't it for me, honestly. This one I gave 3 stars to, because I didn't love it, didn't like the whole premise of like second chance, even though it wasn't really. Next I read Forever Wild by K.A. Tucker. I remember picking this one up because this is when I really started to feel slumpy, was right before this book. And I've been putting off reading this book for a long time because it is the Christmas novella that goes with The Simple Wild. If you know me, you know The Simple Wild is my favorite book of all time. So I knew I was going to love this one. And so I was, at this point, I was feeling really, really slumpy. I was like, okay, if I read this one, it's going to get me out of this. Like, I'm going to get back into my reading grind sort of thing. So I picked this one up. I did really love it. Gave it 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. It wasn't enough to really pull me out of my slump, but it was nice to read something that I actually enjoyed for the first time in a long time. And this one, like I said, is just follows Kala and Jonah from that series through the Christmas. Can't really say much about it because if you haven't read the series, you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about. But I did really like this one. Thought it was really cute. Christmas, Kala and Jonah, Alaska, everything I want all in one book. So this one is really good. Like I said, gave it 5 stars, but still was feeling kind of slumpy after this. Next, I read The Royals Next Door by Karina Halley. This one I really liked. It follows a girl who sort of lives in this, I guess it's like the guest house of a larger house on this property, but the properties have been split now. So she's in this smaller house living with her mom, and the prince and like, or Duke and Duchess or something, like come to live in the house next to her, in like the big house. And it's sort of loosely based on Prince Harry and Meghan when they decided they were going to go live somewhere and just like be normal. And this one follows this girl who's their neighbor and their bodyguard, and I just really thought this one was cute. I gave this one 4 stars. I liked that he, you know, at the beginning is very like skeptical of her because she's living next door and she's like a little out there, and he's just like kind of like super serious about his job and she's just like kind of a goofball. And I just thought they were really cute together, and I liked the royal aspect. And I'm someone who normally hates things to do with like royalty in books. Like that's just not something it's not something I vibe with normally. And so I was like, I felt like this was done well in that sense. Like the royals didn't irritate me. I wasn't like, oh, I hate this because they're in it. They were very like portrayed as very normal people, which I appreciated and really liked that aspect. And I thought the romance overall in this one was really good as well. Next, I read A Touch of Malice by Scarlett St. Clair. This is the 3rd book in the Hades and Persephone retelling series. And I gave this one 4 stars at the time I read it, but the more I think about it, the more I don't know if I like that rating. Maybe I want to go to like 3.5 stars. It was definitely an improvement on the 2nd book. I felt like the 2nd book was just so stupid. And this one, I don't know. I don't like that in these books, I feel like Hades only shows up when they need a smut scene. They're like, okay, now Hades can enter the story again, like bring him in and then take him back out. Like he has no like purpose in the plot of this book, like at all. And that just like kind of annoys me because it's supposed to be a Hades and Persephone retelling, not just like a here's a story about Persephone kind of thing. And so I don't really know where the author's going with that, although I read somewhere that there's actually a series from a Hades perspective, so maybe that's why these books just seem so insanely focused on Persephone. But I don't know if it's the same books being retold from Hades' perspective. I don't know. Someone let me know if you know in the comments, because I have no idea what to do with the series at this point. I will probably read the next one just to see what happens, but I don't know. Haven't really been vibing with them. Like I said, not really sure about the rating on this one anymore. Next, I read The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. If you watched my top 10 Goodreads video, you know that I did not like this book. And I don't know, I was really expecting to love it because everyone loves it, and I just hated this book so much. Oh my god. I gave this book 3 stars, and those 3 stars were solely because this book does have a lot of cutesy moments in it. It has those moments that have you smiling at the page like an idiot while you're reading, and I love those in my books. But the entire plot of this book to me was just so ridiculously stupid, and the characters were stupid, and I was just like, like I said, I think I said in that video, I've never been so happy to see the words "the end" at the end of a book in my entire life. Like, I was relieved to finally have this book be over, because it's so slow. Like, so slow. It is so insanely long for no reason. Like, there's no reason this book should be this long. And it's not even, like, everyone's like, oh, it's such an enemies to lovers. Like, I love enemies to lovers. There is no enemies to lovers going on in this book. This girl in this book has convinced herself that she hates this guy and he hates her, even though he straight up tells her many times throughout this book that he likes her. She just, like, ignores that and keeps going on about how they hate each other. And I'm like, what is even happening? Like, the whole time I was reading this, I'm like, you are literally the dumbest person I've ever read about in my entire life. I mean, I don't know how someone can straight up tell you to your face that they don't hate you like a million times and do super sweet things for you all the time and look out for you and go on a trip to Spain with you to your parents' place for your sister's wedding because they hate you. Like, how do you get that in your brain that this person hates you when they do all these things for you? Like, I don't know. I really could not understand this book. I did not understand the appeal. I did not understand anything about this. This, like, I think really is what sent me into a slump, because this is the last book I physically read, and I have not been able to pick up a book since. Like, this book just, like, killed me on the inside. Like, it was so bad. Next, I read Shipped by Angie Hockman. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I really loved this book, especially after having read The Spanish Love Deception before this. I listened to this one on audio, and this is another enemies to lovers workplace situation, and this one was just done so much better. It follows a girl who works for a cruise line, and there's this guy who's like the social media guy for the company, but he works from home, so she's never actually met him, but she already hates him because she believes he took credit for one of her ideas, and she's just, like, really mad about it. And they're going head to head for the same promotion, and they have to go on this cruise together for a week or something to come up with their pitches for their boss. And so they go on this cruise, and she thinks that she hates him because she thinks he took credit for this thing, and he doesn't really know her, so he's like, whatever. But what I loved about this one, like I said, especially after reading that last one, was that it is addressed, I would say, in the first third of the book. The incident that she thinks he took credit for her idea. Like, they talk about it literally a third of the way through the book. Like, you don't get to the end and she's like, oh, I've hated you all this time because of this stupid misunderstanding. They address it so early on that I was like, thank God, finally a book about adults. Like, it was so nice and so just, like, way more realistic. Like, if you hate someone because of something you overheard one time or something you think happened, like, are you not going to tell that person? Like, I feel like you are. You're not just going to sit in silence for years and stew over it. Like, that's just so stupid. And so I really liked that this book did not do that. This is promoted as a cross between the Unhoneymooners and the Hating Game, and I definitely can see both of those books in this book, and I definitely really, really like this one. Next was The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. I just picked this one up 2 days ago, I think, and listened to it on an audiobook in one sitting while I was working. I really like this one. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Everyone has said with this one, like, make sure you're in the right headspace and, like, blah blah blah, like, trigger warnings and all these things. And the trigger warnings for this book are ones that I personally usually do try to avoid. But I really liked the first 2 books in the series, and I did want to know sort of Kwan's story and what was going to happen. So I felt like I was okay, you know, in an okay space when I picked this book up. And I honestly didn't find that this book was as, like, depressing and, like, traumatizing as everyone made it sound like it was going to be. It does deal with, like, sickness and death of a family member, but I found that it wasn't dragged out in a negative sort of way, if that makes sense. Like, I have a hard time with books that I feel like Broken Night by L.J. Shen, I think about all the time. Like, this, like, that book, I swear, had 3 chapters of the person dying saying goodbye to everyone, and I was like, I can't do that. Like, I cannot do that. And this book didn't have that. So I was, like, okay with that, because it wasn't, like, dragged out of them saying goodbye to everyone and, like, all of these, like, sad things happening. Like, it wasn't like that. And so I was, like, really okay with that. I did like Kwan's story. I liked the relationship, especially at the beginning. But when I finished this book, I did feel like I took away more of her relationship with her family than her relationship with Kwan, which I kind of didn't like, because I was like, it's supposed to be a romance. I'm supposed to be, like, you know, rooting for the couple afterwards. And I just kind of felt like I had read a book about her family. So that wasn't my favorite thing of all time, but just something to note is it is a little on the edge of women's fiction with romance versus being a romance book, which is something that now that I've read it, I've heard a couple places. I'm like, man, I wish I had known that beforehand. But just something to note going into this one. So those are all the books that I read this December. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I'll see you next time.